This is Ruth Guthrie presenting a module on information security. There's so many reports of incidents of cybercrime in the news, you probably are already familiar with some of the issues. People often feel overwhelmed with hacking and viruses because it is unclear where they come from, how they work, and how to prevent or stop them. This is an increasingly important issue today, and it promises to grow in importance. Not being vigilant about cybercrime could cripple world economies. It is a global issue. Two great examples of this are written about in the New York Times. The recent accusation that the Chinese military is behind many corporate attacks in the United States, and the case where the United States hacked an Iranian nuclear site. In February 2013, a single building in Shanghai was reported to be the origin point of most of the hacker attacks against U.S. businesses. The hackers are known in the U.S. as the Shanghai Group or the Comment Crew, and are said to be backed by the Chinese military. The Chinese say that this is an unprofessional accusation from the United States, but the issue continues to be a growing international incident. Another case from June 2010 is when a virus, Stuxnet, was apparently launched by the US and Israel. It is the first time the United States has used a cyber attack to infect a foreign country. Stuxnet forced shutdown of centrifuges that were enriching uranium at an Iranian nuclear facility. Iran originally claimed that they caught Stuxnet in time and that there was no damage. In June of 2012, the New York Times reported that Stuxnet was part of an effort started by the Bush administration and expanded by Obama. Cybercrime is also very costly to businesses worldwide. If you look at estimates on how much money is lost each year as a result of cyber attacks, the numbers are enormous and often reported to be in the hundreds of billions. However, most of the reporting is from antivirus companies, so we're not really sure what the magnitude of the problem is. Most agree that it is a giant problem. Many companies do not report cybercrime because it's bad for business, too. Estimates of as much as 80% of cybercrime goes unreported. Again, this is a hard statistic to gather, so we may not know the true impact. A little on the lighter side, maybe. The emergency alert system in several states was compromised so that the street signs gave out messages of the zombie apocalypse. Twitter accounts for Burger King and Jeep were recently compromised as well. The McDonald's one showing that they bought Burger King and promoting Fish McBites. The Jeep site said that they were bought by Cadillac. Increasingly, social media is a target for cybercrime. Mobile phones are expected to be a future growth area for criminal activity. This is a long list of legislation related to cybercrime. Much of it is relevant to you today as a consumer of technology or as an American or world citizen. In 1974, Richard Nixon signed the Privacy Act. In it, restrictions were placed on the kinds of information that the federal government was allowed to collect on citizens. There were also stipulations about how the information should be handled and blocking the information from being shared without a person's consent. This seems amazing considering how today our information is almost freely shared by companies and social media to make a buck. In 1986, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act made it clear that companies owned electronic correspondence of workers, even though people thought of email as private. It really isn't. Companies have the right to all your correspondence as an employee. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986 banned unauthorized computer access to financial institutions. In 1994, the government required telecom equipment to be designed so that government agencies could intercept correspondence if they had authorization to do so. In 1998, the Freedom of Information Act allowed people to examine government records when it wasn't an invasion of privacy. This made many historic documents available to the public. In 1996, HIPAA required that patients have a right to confidential records. Now, notification of patient confidentiality and a patient's Bill of Rights is standard practice at medical facilities. Enron and other companies had massive financial criminal activities that cost investors billions. As a response to this, SOX was introduced to make sure companies were truthful and could verify the accuracy of their financial systems. Since financial systems are on computers, this has become a really big issue for IT assurance. In 2003, the CAN-SPAM Act prohibits spam, unwanted advertising email, by limiting deceptive subject lines, headers, addresses, etc. The Act limits the tactics used in spam so that there would be less trickery. It also requires spam companies to maintain do not spam lists so that people can opt out of spam. So many of these laws are things that have been covered by other laws but are a reaction to things that happened with technology. Remember that these laws are in the United States and that other countries may not have the same laws that we do. The internet, being worldwide, might have incidents that occur affecting the United States, but in those countries no law was broken. Global issues exist because the laws are different in each country. It might also be difficult to find a criminal in another country. Crimes that are global issues include hacking, software piracy, intellectual property violations, and child pornography. There's also a rise in social media cybercrimes. Here are a few statistics. 11% of people had their social media account hacked. This year, the number is up to 15%. The total rate of cybercrime on social networks, more than simply a hacked account, but also including harassment, bullying, click or like jacking, and falling victim to scams, is 39%. Let's talk about a few infamous hackers. One of our first infamous hackers is John Draper, nicknamed Captain Crunch. He's the guy who used the whistle in the cereal box to gain access to AT&T's network to get free long-distance calling. After an article about him appeared in Esquire magazine, he was convicted of toll fraud and put on 5 years probation. Later, he was employed by Apple and has been a software developer and chief technology officer. This picture of him screams 1970s. If you look online, you can see more up-to-date photos. Robert Morris is infamous for launching the first internet worm. At the time, he claimed it was a program to gauge the size of the internet, but launching it at MIT, not Cornell, where he was a graduate student, looked a bit suspect. Morris was the son of a National Security Agency worker, so this was particularly disturbing. He was the first person convicted under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. In 1990, he was sentenced to 3 years of probation, community service, and had to pay a fine of $10,000. He's now a tenured professor at MIT. The next hacker, David Smith, released one of the first attacks that attached itself to email. Melissa, named after a Florida stripper, attaches to a person's email and propagates to other people in their mail directory. The Melissa virus shut down people's networks because so much excess email traffic was generated. Authorities caught Smith within a week, and he was sentenced to 10 years and a small fine, though he only served 20 months. Kevin Mitnick. Where do I start? Mitnick has been convicted twice of computer fraud. He was hiding from the federal government, committing computer crimes for a few years before he was apprehended. He was banned from using computers, which he fought in court and won. He was not allowed to profit from books or movies for 7 years after his conviction. He was imprisoned for 5 years. He spent 8 months in solitary confinement because he claims that law enforcement convinced a judge that he would start a nuclear war by whistling into a payphone. He now owns his own security consulting company. In this picture, you'll notice his t-shirt says, "I'm not a hacker, I'm a security professional." Kevin Polson is another person who hacked phone systems. Hacking into the phone lines for Kiss FM, he fixed it so he would win a Porsche. Eventually, he, like Mitnick, was also a fugitive from the FBI. He was eventually convicted for wire, mail, and computer fraud and served 4 years in prison and paid a fine of about $60,000. He's currently an editor for Wired.com. Onel de Guzman and Rommel Romanos are two Filipino students who wrote and released the I Love You or Love Bug virus. By opening a fake love letter, victims were sent to a site in the Philippines that infected their computer and gave out their passwords and other private information. It is estimated that the cost to companies in 20 different countries was more than $10 billion. The two were arrested and then released because at the time there were no laws in the Philippines to convict them. The last hacker I'll talk about is Aaron Swartz, also recently in the news. He was a computer activist and a founder of the Computing Commons and Reddit. He was a big believer in making information free for everyone, and he was accused of making thousands of journal articles from JSTOR freely available to the public. The Department of Justice pursued him and arrested him for 13 counts of felony hacking. He committed suicide at the age of 26. This was a really sad story. All right, a few questions at the end. What was the name of the famous computer virus that infected Iranian nuclear facilities? Stuxnet. What was the alias for John Draper, the phone service hacker who used the whistle? Captain Crunch. In what sense is cybercrime global? The internet is global. The laws for cybercrime are different for different countries. That's the end.